Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Ice Wayne's World Edition, brought to you by Dokes Brookfield Case Financial Group, our friends at Palamount Hockey Academy and Toby Hockey. Wayne Kosior joining me as always. Busy weekend, Wayne. Is it finally starting to taper off a little bit? I mean, we've seen so many playoff games, showcase tournaments, you name it. Is it a bit of downtime now?
Not quite yet, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. There's another big tournament here. The Subaru Classic goes again this weekend in Regina, so I'll be taking that in. And the Ontario Junior Reign out of California, they're having a camp in Saskatoon. I'll probably try to get up to that. And, of course, keeping on top of all these Western Hockey League games that are still going and watching a few NHL games, so keeping me busy.
Keeping me busy too. Certainly we'll get to the Western Hockey League in just one sec, but let's touch base on what did occur this last 10 days out in Estevan, Saskatchewan. Certainly a busy hub for junior A hockey all across Canada. The Centennial Cup returned. A little bit different format as we've discussed, but it really came down to two really strong teams that we kind of picked at the beginning. We talked about goaltending being key. What else was the key for both Pickering and Brooks to kind of finalize themselves and put them in the finals?
Well, first of all, I guess I was out there. I spent a couple of days in Estevan to catch some of the action, and I really like the new format with all the leagues being represented. Even though there is some disparity in the caliber of the teams from the different leagues and stuff like that, but I think from a fan perspective, it's really good to just get an idea of what the caliber of play is in the different leagues and have them play head to head, and so that was interesting. But as far as the teams, I mean, Brooks is obviously they recruit extremely well. Obviously, they go with the full 6 American players. A lot of out-of-province players, including from Ontario, Manitoba. I think there might even have been in BC, versus kind of going with an Alberta contingent, whereas Pickering kind of went with homegrown kids. I think every single kid was from Ontario and probably not too far outside the Pickering area. So, again, it's a big disparity based on that and stuff. But, again, Pickering did a good job. And I think, as far as the final, I mean, the coaching of Pickering was masterful. I mean, they basically were playing a trap and frustrating the heck out of Brooks. And I mean, that was a brilliant strategy. And finally, Brooks broke through. And I knew that was going to happen when they finally broke through that and get a goal or two. It was going to be done type thing. But again, I think great coaching on the Pickering side. The coach obviously had his team very, very well prepared for based on the team he's playing. And I mean, Brooks is just, it's a high caliber team that's, recruited from across North America.
Talk to us real quick, Wayne, about the reason for the parity and the differences across Canada. It's not because of geography. Is it because of resource of the team? And I mean, you talk about how heavily recruiting Brooks is able to do. They've done it back-to-back now in the offerings of the Centennial Cup. But we look at other teams, I mean, small, like Brooks is just outside of a metropolitan area, for lack thereof. Pickering is right in the middle of Toronto. Mm-hmm. Dauphin is 2.5 hours away from Winnipeg. But what are the other, besides the active recruiting and the resources available for a team, how does one team just be that much better over the course of an entire year than other teams that are offered? I mean, Red Lake is probably the smallest community out of the SI or the NO. Right. I mean, both those teams have very little population, and the amount of work they have to do to get into this tournament is amazing.
Right. Yeah, no, I would say you hit it bang on. Resources is probably the number one thing that would come to mind as far as the difference in why teams are better than the others, and of course can draw is just those resources, I guess, to go out and find those players, spend the time on the road, recruiting them, bringing parents and families into Brooks and stuff like that. All the stuff that really isn't tracked or reported, but of course we know that's obviously the case. And certainly a smaller market teams just don't have that wherewithal to pay scouts and people to travel, find those players and stuff and create, what basically Brooks has created is kind of an environment where players want to come there just because they're fairly high profile because they win all the time. They've had a couple high profile players come out of there, which makes the recruiting easier. And, when you start out with 6 premium American players, I mean, that puts them at a huge advantage right there out of the gate type thing. And very, very few people or teams employ 6 American players. Some would have none. Probably in some of those smaller leagues, probably absolutely none. It'd be all mostly local kids and stuff. So, you know, good on Brooks, I guess, if they got those resources to do that. But I think it kind of creates disparity in the competition. And I think in the end, fans turn away from that. They want to see great games. They don't want to see blowouts. They don't want to know who's going to win from day one. And, you know, I would say or challenge the leagues that they, you know, including the provincial associations, Hockey Canada, they need to put rules in place that kind of help to balance the parity and keep it competitive. And, you know, one of those things is to have drafts. Drafts kind of level the table a little bit, and then just kind of minimize maybe how many out of province players and how many Americans that teams can have. And again, that would create a bit of a parity, in my opinion, and would welcome your comments and thoughts on that.
It's funny because you've kind of really alluded to the next question I had for you, Wayne. Because what are the steps that provincial and national organizations can do to release, you know, or give a little bit more of like a level playing field? And let's be honest. I mean, you've got Brooks at the top of the monopoly. Call him the boardwalk and park place of the board. And nobody's
Mhm.
Baltic and Mediterranean, but you've got some reds and yellows and greens in there. We've got great hockey programs and organizations that play within the rules, of course, but you know, you've got teams that have a monopoly and are able to create that much more resource as opposed to a team that's playing in Northern Ontario, for example, or in the
Mhm.
Maritimes. I
Right.
mean, let's say, you know, yeah, you go to Brooks, Alberta, great place, amazing culture, wonderful geography. You've got the, you know, the outside life, the indoor world, the, you know, all the amenities. And, or you go to Red Lake, Ontario. And I'm
Yeah.
not trying to say Red Lake, Ontario is
Oh.
just Red Lake, Ontario, but to the person that's coming from Minnesota or
Hmm.
one of those potential import players, trying to create that atmosphere, that environment that's going to excite the player, that potential new player, is different all across the nation. And
Mm.
I mean, do you limit the amount of American-born players? Do you limit the amount of imports allowed? Do you, you know, how does that work? I don't have an answer, Wing, and I don't
Yeah.
think. I think the biggest answer that was answered this past week, as I use the word answer too many times, is the fact that we were about to host a Centennial Cup. And I think we were looking for a solution to bring back a hockey collective over the entire nation because
Yeah.
that is what was missing over the last 2 years. And that was such an important draw to see hockey return from across Canada in a championship scenario. Now, whether or not that stays the same, this might be an answer. You know, because the Dudley Cup wasn't played in Northwestern Ontario, Northern Ontario, that champion would have been only one team as opposed to four.
Right.
And there may have been a champion between Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And you're adding one Alberta, you're adding one in the Maritime. So it would have been instead of a 10 team or 11 team field, maybe just 4 or 6. And that might be a little bit better and less parity. I don't know. But the bottom line was let's return hockey to a national setting. Let's allow every team from each province or area to be submitted and represent. And let's see some great hockey, which we did. The
Yeah.
one question I have for you on top of that, Wayne, is you were there for a couple of days. Did you hear any sounds or any noises that were, well, where's BC? Does BC really need to be back? Do we miss having the BCHL involved with Hockey Canada, or was it just something that wasn't even discussed?
Yeah, I know there was a little bit of chatter on that, but I don't think anybody was missing them. But the only chatter I maybe heard is that they said, you know, if a Penticton is there, which, you know, Penticton is the BC version of Brooks in the AJ, you know, again, completely resources that no other teams have. And that's frankly, you know, why they're as good as they are. And I would argue that with anybody. And so there was just that. But, you know, I think the fact that you had all 9 leagues represented, with the exception of BC, because again, they're not part of the CJHL, I guess, anymore. It was fantastic to see. And I mean, it created a lot of variety. Fans don't want to see the same teams over and over again. It's just a breath of fresh air to see some new teams that you've never seen. And, you know, I just really enjoyed. There was a lot of great players that you hear about, you read about type thing that may have been from the Maritimes or, from Ontario. And I mean, the one real fascinating story was that young kid from Pickering that contracted cancer a couple of years ago, and the same cancer that ultimately took Terry Fox's leg in life. And this kid is beaten it so far, and it's back playing hockey. I mean, what a phenomenal story. And then they go to the championship, and it was a David and Goliath battle. But I mean, that story in itself was worth the price of admission.
Absolutely. Last comment before we move on, Wayne. Can you foreshadow the Centennial Cup to stay in the same format, or do you think it's going to go back to more regional teams and a regional championship?
Well, I'd like to see it stay the way it was this year with all the teams and leagues represented. I mean, I'm not sure the logistics on that and the cost to the team and how much money does that eat into the margins. But I, as an individual and as a hockey person, really really enjoyed the variety and seeing all the leagues versus just seeing four, which a lot of cases you're seeing two or three of the same teams all the time. So there's very, very little variety and stuff. So, if it makes economic sense, I would like to see it keep doing it this way. Like every league's represented, and there's going to be the odd mismatch, but that's fine. Nothing wrong with that type thing. And, I think, one last thing is kudos to Estevan. I think they did an amazing job there. And, just being out in the community, went out and had dinner one evening and stuff. And it's just, everything is kind of tailored right around the hockey and stuff. And it was just a fantastic atmosphere. And like you said, we haven't had this for a few years with the COVID thing. So you don't realize how much you miss these things until you go back and see that atmosphere and the people from across the country watching some great hockey and having some fun.
Certainly, Estevan, Saskatchewan was a tremendous host for the 22 Centennial Cup. There has been mention of the 23 city. Have you heard who's hosting?
Yeah, as far as I know, Portage has been awarded that officially, I think. So that's exciting. So it'll be going back to Manitoba there, which is great. I would look forward. I will be planning on probably being there next year. And I know Portage is going to do a great job. They have a great organization there. And, it's going to be an exciting thing.
It'll be one of those things where you see whether or not the Terriers build up their roster for a run into Centennial or how that will work. Remains to be seen, but Portage La Prairie, Manitoba, hosting the 23 Centennial Cup. Wayne, let's take a quick break. Let's come back. We'll talk about the WHL and our third topic here on the ice with the Wayne's World Edition. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Back with Wayne Kosior here on the Ice Wayne's World Edition. Topic 2 today, Wayne, is another playoff series, something we've been watching over the last couple of weeks, the East Division playoff of the Western Hockey League. We commented last week about the offense of one team versus the stalwart veteranship of the defense of the other team. We're talking about the Winnipeg Ice offense, of course, and the Edmonton Oil Kings defense. Players of the week certainly show the fact that Edmonton came out on top with a 5-game series win. Wayne, I'm going to say you were right. I was wrong. So I'll be honest. I'll admit when I'm wrong. Were you watching those games? I mean, Dylan Gunther, Caden Gooley, to start them off, like they shut those Ice offensive down.
Mm-hmm.
How?
It was amazing to see because, obviously the Winnipeg Ice is a powerhouse team, and you've seen how they kind of ripped through the series previous to that, leading into facing Edmonton. But again, it just also reinforces how great that Edmonton team is. And, I've said it from day one. I'll continue to say it as far as, goaltending and defense wins championships when you go into these 7-game series. And, just going in, I felt that Edmonton was a bit stronger on the defense, maybe a bit stronger in goaltending. It's fairly close in the goaltending, but just the defense of Edmonton is unreal. And, I think that was a difference maker. And of course, it really hurt the Ice when Matthew Savoy went down and stuff. That's a big hole in their lineup there. So again, that turned the tables a little bit against them, but still very impressive. I mean, kudos to the Winnipeg Ice. They had a heck of a season. They got an incredible team. They're going to have an incredible team next year type thing. And, Edmonton's going to move on, I guess, and is waiting for the winner of that game tonight.
Right, Game 7 of the West Division going down tonight. Seattle and Kamloops. Haven't been watching this too much, but my boy JD Houghton, who now lives in Kenora, is a big Kamloops Blazer fan. He's taking Kamloops. I can't pick because I haven't been watching much of it, but I know for a fact, just to jump real quick on the Western Hockey League East side, Caden Gooley the player of the week, 3 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points. And Sebastian Casa, the goaltender for the Oil Kings, outdid the ice. He played with a 192 goals against average, which is insane. I mean, that last game, quite frankly, just showed how strong of a team Edmonton is, as opposed to, you lose Matt Savoy and you can't. That's a little big of a hole to fill, but there's a lot of offense there that just didn't show up in Game 4 and Game 5. Just wasn't there. So kudos to Oil Kings for shutting them down, and looking forward to a good battle there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was a great series. And I mean, even though it went in 5, there were some great games there and stuff. And there was a couple of pivotal moments that happened in almost every game that kind of turned the tables and stuff. But, Edmonton was obviously the deserved winner, hands down. I don't think anybody from the Winnipeg Ice would argue that type thing. And, like I say, Edmonton's going to go on and take on the winner of Seattle and Kamloops tonight. And I guess if I have to put my chips down to that, I'm going to go with Kamloops on then. They're pretty strong. Again, they got Garand and net. He's unbelievable. Seattle's defense, I maybe like a little bit better than Kamloops. So it should be a dandy series.
Should be. Looking forward to it as well. Winnipeg better off next year compared to Edmonton because they have a younger team?
Yeah, I would say that, Edmonton's going to be in a complete rebuild from what I understand. They're going to lose a lot of players, and Winnipeg not quite so much. I think Winnipeg's still going to be a really good team next year because they got a lot of returning players. And so, I would take the Ice over the Oil Kings next year. My preseason predictions, I guess, going into 22-23.
We'll have to see what happens. Last topic of the evening, Wayne, is something we've seen. You see the unbelievable jubilation of victory, hoisting a trophy, celebrating with your teammates, your fans, your parents. And then on the flip side of that coin is the agony of defeat. You lose that last game. Of course, you hear all these players when they do, their interviews, and say they want to get to the last dance. They want to be able to have that opportunity, but they're not quite done. They don't host conference championship banners in the stands. They host, or they hoist, the championship ones. How does a player and their attitudes and their actions reflect what type of player they are? What do advisors, what do future organizations see from that? Do they take anything away from these wins and losses by these players?
Yeah, I suspect a little bit, but I guess, at the end of the day, these players are still kids. Most of them are under 20 years old, and quite a bit under 20 years old and stuff like that. So it's a tough thing. They haven't faced, a loss like that. Sometimes when you make it that far and then lose, I mean, it's a real letdown and stuff. So, my response to that would be is what I look for is guys that are good teammates and stuff that support their teammate members. And quite often you'll see if a younger player is sad, maybe even come into tears and stuff. Some of the veteran guys that'll go by and give him a pat on the back and say, hey, we've been through this. There's bigger problems in life, and we give it all we did. And, that's all anybody can ask is give you everything that you've got. And if that's not good enough, so be it type thing. So that's what I look for is good teammanship. And even on the winning side, I know sometimes players can go a little bit overboard, which, you give them a little bit of slack. It is pretty exciting, say, if you win a conference championship or a league championship or Memorial Cup, but you still got to be respectful of your competition and not, really rub it in their face. So again, just look for classy people that celebrate, but don't go overboard.
Absolutely. The cliche of sportsmanship reigns supreme, is second to none. And I mean, you look at some of these players are young, 16, 17 years old. They may have had the golden yellow brick road their entire career, and they lose this one. Yeah. And you often wonder, what does that do to a player's psyche? What does it do to a player's mentality? And, that's where the veteran comes in, like you said, Wayne, and says, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. This is one opportunity we have amongst many more that are about to come. So, for the players and the parents, it's parents too, because, obviously you want to recognize that the amount of effort that goes into these games is tremendous. And you hope that your players leave it all on the ice, for the lack of a better term. But how you portray yourself and display your actions are still being watched afterwards too. And I think it's important for players to, or sorry, parents to be that example for young players, because they still look up to mom and dad. No question
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of what leads into, it's kind of like win with class and lose with class, and parents got to be the role models for their kids, and they can't be whining or complaining or whatever. Like I say, only one team wins their final game in the year type thing in these leagues, and so it's just understood somebody has to lose.
What would Landon do if he saw you or mom in the stands just losing? Like, have you ever? I mean, that's the one. Like, I've never been in that position. Like, I've seen parents lose it, or
Yeah.
parents been very supportive, on a
Yeah.
national, international, provincial stage. But I mean, having a son or a daughter go through that, I've never experienced that. So, for
Yeah.
you, Wayne, what is your take on seeing your son or a family member that just doesn't get to the top, doesn't they just come in second?
Yeah, well, you just gotta support them, right? And explain to them, how it works. And I mean, as we get older, we learn that you can't win them all, and losing can actually teach you lots of things in life, and take it as a lesson. And if there's things that you can improve on to increase your chances to win the next time, that's great. And again, all these lessons that you learn from hockey and sports in general do translate to life and business and all that stuff, right? So I think that's the main thing. I mean, of course, as parents, you get almost as emotional as the players because you've invested a lot of time, money, resources, and it's just an exciting thing. But at the end of the day, as I say, there's only one team that can win their last game in every league type thing. And, so the chance of doing that is pretty minimal. But again, as long as you give it your all, I always say, and work hard, you should have no regrets, because there's nothing more you could have done to change the result.
June is certainly not a slower month for you, Wayne. You've got obviously you said Subaru coming up this weekend, but also USHL drafts and all those other topics are starting to come up. Is there a timeline for you? I mean, obviously you're continually reviewing players and whatnot. So how busy is June going to be for you as the head scout for some of these programs in the States, and also Trailblazer hockey?
Yeah, well, as far as the USHL, basically things are done. They had their draft early May type thing, so that's kind of shaken out there now, and really it's going into their main camps. Will start up here in June. They'll be kind of choosing, the teams the players that'll come back in August to play for the next season. There'll still be a few more cuts and carrying some extra players. Still a few more camps going on. The BCHL continues to have some camps through June. The SJHL just wrapped up their last couple of those past week. I think the MJ, as far as I know, are all done theirs. And so it'll just be finding some players, some spots that are still looking for commitments, ranging from main camps to get them to and stuff. And so it should be a little bit slower coming into later June. July should be a relatively quiet month. And then August, you all ramps up again, getting ready for the new season, which is exciting.
Certainly look forward to the next couple of discussions with us in the weeks ahead. Wayne Kosior with us here at Wayne's World on the Ice. Wayne, thank you so much. Hopefully you're staying a little bit drier than us here in Manitoba. We just got about 5 inches of rain, so it's fantastic here.
Wow. Yeah. No, we got lots of nice sunshine out here right now. Hopefully it's heading your way there, Theo, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Wayne Kosior with us, TrailblazerHockeyAdvisors.com. Do check them out if you are one of those players that is still looking for a home or looking for some advice into next year's agendas. Do reach out to Wayne. Certainly a wealth of information, both north and south of the border. Every single situation, opportunity can be reviewed by Wayne and his group. So do appreciate your time. We will see you next time on the Ice with Wayne's World Edition on Tuesday. Have a great week, Wayne. We'll see you next week.
You too, Theo. Thanks a lot.
Everyone, bye-bye for now. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.